21st century Star Trek is obsessed with revisiting the past, especially with the years just before Kirk took command of the Enterprise. Many fans are filled with hope for the franchise at last thanks to Strange New Worlds and its return to self-contained stories. The technology today may look different than what the original series was capable of showing back in the 1960s, but many of the stories still hold their own all these decades later. As with all TV series, not every episode is great. For every City on the Edge of Forever and Balance of Terror is a Spock's Brain or Way to Eden. But what about those episodes stuck in between the high and the low points? Today we're going to take a look at underrated episodes from the original series and why they're worth a watch. By any other name. In this episode, the Enterprise responds to a distress call and encounters an alien species. These aliens quickly take control of the Enterprise thanks to powerful belts capable of paralyzing and dehydrating people. Kirk is forced to watch as the Kelvins take the ship to the galactic barrier to call for reinforcements. Why is this episode underrated? As happens often in Star Trek, Kirk relies on his ingenuity to beat dozens of no-win scenarios. Kirk bets the survival of his crew entirely on the nature of humanity. The Kelvins had assumed human forms, and by doing so, gained access to human emotions. Maybe Vulcans and their logic were actually onto something. Courtmartial. When Trek lays down the law, most usually think of Measure of a Man, or the Menagerie. What sets Courtmartial apart is that Kirk is the one facing judgment, accused of willfully killing a fellow officer. Why is this episode underrated? With Kirk under arrest, it's up to Spock and Dr. McCoy to save the day, even though the last word is still given to Captain Kirk. This episode does have problems, but it gives fans three major cornerstones for canon. It's the first mentions of Starfleet and Starfleet Command, and it's the first ever use of a starbase. The Empath. In our only entry from the third season, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy investigate an abandoned research station only to become involuntary test subjects. This episode is underrated for several reasons. First, it was one of 4 episodes banned by the BBC for more than 20 years. Second, the production value of this episode was far different than anything seen on Star Trek before. Even DeForest Kelley considered this episode one of his favorites. Errand of Mercy. The original series was able to provide commentary on current events through allegories and morality plays. And there was nothing more current in the 1960s than the Cold War between democracy and communism. This episode pits Kirk against the Klingon core as they fight for influence over an impartial third party that is later revealed to be a highly advanced species. Why is this episode underrated? We're 26 episodes into the first season, and this episode brings us our first meeting with the Klingons. Governor Kor sets the bar really high for this fan-favorite species. This episode delivers on multiple levels by not allowing either side to claim victory. It goes beyond the Cold War parallel, reminding the audience that there's more to life than politics. Obsession. Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future was dependent on a positive moral center, with humanity seeking to better itself. Obsession puts this to the test when Kirk, haunted by a past mistake, channels Moby Dick to hunt down his white whale, a gaseous cloud that drains hemoglobin from its prey and kills them. Why is this episode underrated? Humans are imperfect beings, and while we have occasionally seen flaws in Captain Kirk, this entire episode is dedicated to deconstructing our hero. Kirk's regret drives this episode. Only when Kirk realizes that he spent years obsessing over something that he couldn't have done differently is he able to finally find redemption. A piece of the action. The Enterprise is sent to investigate the disappearance of the Horizon, which has been missing for over 100 years. The Horizon is nowhere to be seen, but our characters find themselves on a planet modeled after 1920s Chicago. Technology can't save our heroes this time, and they are forced to rely solely on their wits. Why is this one overrated? Science fiction on television is really expensive, and a show like Star Trek can only rely so much on time travel plots. This episode takes advantage of cost-saving measures and delivers a funny, witty, and excellent episode with our favorite trio. It also underscores the importance of Starfleet's Prime Directive and the unintentional contamination it will cause when violated. The Ultimate Computer. In this episode, the Enterprise is a testbed for the M5 computer as it competes against 4 manned starships during wargames. All seems harmless until M5 destroys an unmanned freighter and inflicts severe damage on the other ships. Kirk and crew must find a way to disable M5, especially when it thwarts the crew at every single turn. Why is this one underrated? AI is pushing the barriers of technology, software, and so much more. Even though AI is much more acceptable today, there is still a lot of fear in what surrounds AI. Will it take over jobs? Will it replace people? Can it make decisions on a moral and ethical basis? This episode isn't afraid to explore the dangers of AI, and by doing so, it actually gives us one of the best villains in the franchise. Well, everyone, that's our list. Do you agree with the episodes I shared with you today? Or is there an episode I might have overlooked? If so, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell for new updates. I'll see you again soon.